If you've ever heard someone say, "It's not about the fence," let me tell you, it was absolutely about the fence. Or more specifically, it was about what the fence represented. The word no. I moved into a neighborhood called Maple Hollow, just outside Raleigh, North Carolina, after my aunt passed and left me her 2-acre lot on a quiet cul-de-sac. I work remote, the boring kind of job where your biggest daily thrill is whether the Wi-Fi blinks during a meeting. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for trees, a little creek in the back, and the kind of peace where you can hear your own thoughts without somebody revving an engine next to your bedroom window at 6 a.m. The house needed work, but I didn't mind. I painted, I replaced old fixtures, I cleaned out decades of "I might need this someday" boxes in the garage. And slowly, it started to feel like mine. The neighbors waved. A couple even brought cookies. People seemed decent. Except one family. The Whitlocks. They didn't wave. They didn't nod. They looked at me like I'd moved into their living room uninvited. I didn't take it personally at first. Some folks are just wired that way. Then I started seeing tire tracks. Not on the street. On my land. At first it was faint, like maybe a landscaper had cut the corner by accident. But it kept happening. The same diagonal line from the east side of my property through the backyard, straight toward the woods behind my creek. And then came the trash. Empty energy drink cans. Fast food wrappers. A broken plastic mud flap with some brand logo on it. It was the kind of litter you only get when people stop seeing your property as someone's home and start seeing it as a convenient piece of nothing. One Sunday morning, it got loud. Like, wake up in your soul loud. An ATV engine roared so close to my bedroom window, I felt it in my teeth. I stumbled out half awake, barefoot, and just in time to watch a bright red four-wheeler tear across my backyard like it was a track built for him. The rider was a teen, helmet on, exhaust modified to sound like a chainsaw chewing metal. He cut through the soft ground near the creek, sprayed mud all over the area my aunt used to garden, and vanished into the trees. I stood there in the dew, fists clenched, watching the ruts he left behind. And I swear I could hear my aunt's voice in my head. Don't let people treat you like you don't matter. That was the first time it hit me. This wasn't just annoying. It was disrespect, casual and confident. I did what any normal person does when they don't want trouble, but also don't want to be a doormat. I set up a camera. Nothing fancy. A little outdoor cam tucked into a birdhouse looking down that diagonal trail. 2 days later, I had my answer. The teen's face was clear as daylight. And that evening, when I asked another neighbor, she didn't even hesitate. "Oh, that's Carter Whitlock," she said. "Debbie's kid. Debbie Whitlock, the HOA vice president. Also a real estate agent. Also, apparently, the unofficial mayor of Maple Hollow." Great. Perfect. I'd lived there less than a month, and I was already standing in front of the neighborhood boss battle. I tried polite first. I found Debbie's number on the HOA site and called her on a Tuesday afternoon. Figured she'd be in a professional mood. She answered like she'd been waiting for my call. "This is Debbie." I kept my voice calm. "Hi, Ms. Whitlock. My name's Ben Carter. I'm the new owner on Linden Court, the corner lot with the creek. I wanted to talk about your son riding his ATV across my property early in the mornings." There was a pause, and then she switched into this sugary, customer service tone that set off every alarm in my body. "Oh, Ben. Welcome. That path has been used for years, honey. Long before you moved in. It's basically a neighborhood access route." I checked my survey. I said, "There's no easement. And it's loud. And he's tearing up the ground." Her voice cooled, just a notch. In real estate, we call it implied access. If a route is used openly for long enough, it becomes a community right. I almost laughed. "That's not how property law works," I said, still calm. "Maybe not in your paperwork," she said. "But in this neighborhood, we respect traditions. We give and take." Then came the part she didn't bother to sugarcoat. Also, fighting community norms usually doesn't go well. The HOA can be very thorough with people who don't cooperate. I hung up and just stared at my kitchen wall for a second. I've been underestimated my whole life. Not in a dramatic way, just in that everyday way where people assume quiet means weak. I used to swallow it. I used to let it slide. But standing there, thinking about the ruts in my aunt's garden and the way Debbie talked to me like I was a temporary renter in my own house, something shifted. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to threaten. I was going to handle it the way I handle everything. Documented, legal, and final. I spent the next couple weeks reading property law, HOA bylaws, county ordinances, fence rules. Everything. And the more I read, the clearer it got. There was no easement. No recorded right-of-way. Nothing. Debbie's tradition was just years of people letting her family do whatever they wanted because nobody wanted the headache. The HOA rules did mention fences. Height limits, setback lines, approved materials. Nothing that prevented me from fencing my own property inside my own boundary. So I called a fencing company with a reputation for dealing with HOAs, and I scheduled the install for a weekend. Debbie would be out of town at a conference. That part wasn't an accident. If you've ever tried to complete a project while someone's standing there inventing rules on the spot, you understand. The crew showed up Saturday morning with posts and panels. By Sunday afternoon, it was done. 10-foot privacy fence right across the diagonal trail, clean lines, within setback, HOA-approved stain, private property, and no trespassing signs spaced perfectly like I was making a point. Because I was. I took photos from every angle. I saved the receipt. I saved the permit exemption note from the county. I created a folder on my laptop labeled fence because I had a feeling I was about to need it. Monday morning at 6:20 a.m., I heard it. The ATV engine, revving, then cutting off abruptly like the rider hit a wall. Then came the pounding on my front door, hard enough to rattle the glass. I looked through the peephole, and there she was. Debbie Whitlock, in workout clothes, hair pulled back tight, face red like a warning light. I opened the door with my phone already recording, not hidden, just held at chest level like a normal person in 2025 who doesn't trust anyone who bangs on their door at sunrise. Morning, I said. Her eyes flicked to the phone, and she didn't care. What the hell do you think you're doing? She snapped. You built that monstrosity without approval. My son couldn't access the trails. You have no right to block a community route. It's not a community route, I said, still calm. It's my backyard. We'll see about that, she said, and she stepped closer like she wanted me to step back. I've been on this HOA board for 14 years. I know everyone at City Hall. I can make your life very expensive. I smiled a little, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. Debbie, I said, are you threatening me? She blinked, like she didn't expect me to name it out loud. I'm informing you, she said, how things work here. Okay, I said, and I tilted my phone slightly so it was obvious. Just making sure I get that clearly. Her nostrils flared, and right on cue, a silver SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped a man in a polo shirt with a tired face. The HOA president, Mark Ellison. He looked like someone who hadn't wanted to be involved in anything since 2003. Debbie waved him over like she'd summoned him. Mark, tell him, she demanded. Tell him he can't do this. Mark gave me a forced smile. Mr. Ben, right? Ben Carter, I said. Mark, Debbie snapped. This fence violates community standards. It blocks established access. I didn't argue. I walked inside, grabbed my folder, and came back out like I'd been waiting for this moment. Mark, I said. I highlighted the fence bylaw sections. Height, placement, materials. All compliant. I also have my survey showing no easement. And I have footage of the trespassing and the noise times. Debbie's expression changed just slightly, like she was trying to decide whether to bluff harder or pivot. Mark took the papers and scanned them, his shoulders sinking with every page. Debbie, he said carefully, it looks compliant. It is compliant, I said. And the ATV runs before 7 a.m. multiple weekends, which actually violates our noise rules. Debbie's face twisted. You think you're so clever, she hissed. You have no idea who you're messing with. Then she leaned in at my doorway, voice dropping to that fake friendly whisper people use when they want plausible deniability. It's crazy how old houses can have electrical problems, she said. Wires are unpredictable. Fires happen fast. Mark's eyes widened like he'd just heard the quiet part out loud. I kept my face neutral and asked, loud enough for my phone to pick up, did you just imply my house might catch fire if I don't do what you want? Debbie stepped back with a shrug. I'm talking about safety, she said, too smooth. Then she turned and walked to her car like she'd won something. As soon as they left, I backed up the recording to 3 places. Cloud, external drive, email to myself. I also upgraded my cameras. Not because I wanted a war, but because she'd just told me, in her own way, that she was willing to go past petty. Over the next week, Debbie launched a smear campaign in the neighborhood group. Posts about outsiders ruining traditions. Comments about property values. People who didn't know the facts piled on because it's easier to be mad online than to be fair in real life. I didn't respond. I screenshot everything. A quiet older man named Hank from 3 doors down came over one evening with 2 coffees and said, "You're doing the right thing. Just keep your receipts. Debbie doesn't like losing." He also let slip something that made my skin prickle. "That trail," he said, nodding toward my back fence. "She's obsessed with it. It's not just for her. Kid." That's when the story took a turn. 3 days after the HOA meeting where Debbie tried to force a vote against my fence and got shut down publicly, I came home from groceries and found the fence smashed. Not, "Oops, someone bumped it." Smashed like somebody used force and tools. Posts yanked. Panels cracked. And spray painted on one remaining plank in black paint. Move or burn. My throat went tight. Not fear. Not exactly. More like that slow, cold understanding that I was dealing with people who didn't hear no unless it came with consequences. I called the police. Officer Valdez showed up, walked the perimeter, and his eyes narrowed at the tire tracks in the mud. "That's a pretty specific tread," he said. "ATV, off-road pattern." I showed him the previous footage. I showed him Debbie's morning tantrum. I showed him the recording where she joked about fires. He made a face like he'd heard her name before. "Whitlock," he murmured. "Yeah. Okay." While he was still taking notes, Debbie's SUV rolled up. Like she had a calendar reminder labeled "Geo Mock the Victim." She marched right toward me. "Taking pictures of your little pity project?" She sneered. "I'm filing a report," I said. "Someone vandalized my property." Debbie scoffed. "You probably did it yourself to frame my son." Officer Valdez stepped between us. "Ma'am, this is an active investigation. Do you have anything helpful?" Debbie's confidence flickered for half a second. "I'm just saying," she insisted. "Nobody in our community would do this. He's stirring drama." I didn't argue with her. I just opened an app and said, "Officer, after the threats, I installed additional cameras." Debbie's face froze. "This footage is from yesterday afternoon," I continued. "2 people on an ATV. One has a chainsaw. The other has a sledge." Officer Valdez watched, then looked up. "The faces are clear," he said. Then he turned to Debbie. "Ma'am, one of these individuals appears to be your son." Debbie snapped. "That's impossible." Then immediately pivoted. "Even if it was him, he's a kid. Boys do stupid things." Officer Valdez didn't blink. "This isn't prank stuff. This is criminal mischief and threats. Do you understand that?" Debbie's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to pick which lie would work best. And that's when Mark Ellison, the HOA president, hung back after everyone left and quietly said to me, "Ben, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was this bad." I stared at him and said, "You did know. You just didn't want it to be your problem." He didn't argue. He just looked tired. That night, I got an email from someone on the HOA board. The secretary, a woman named Tessa Lane. Subject line: "You need to see this." Inside were screenshots, meeting minutes, and internal messages. Debbie had been pushing for years to secure access through my property. It wasn't about her son. It was about money. Buried in the documents was a proposed development plan for the wooded parcel behind my creek. A luxury outdoor retreat project. And in one email thread, Debbie wrote, casually, like it was nothing, "If we control the Carter Corridor, we save 6 figures in road construction." I sat there staring at the screen while my stomach dropped. My land wasn't just a shortcut. It was a missing piece in a profit plan. That's why she was so confident. That's why she was so aggressive. That's why she called it tradition. Because tradition sounds nicer than we've been. Using your uncle's property to benefit ourselves, and now we want to keep doing it. The next morning, I sent one email. 1. To every HOA board member. To the neighborhood attorney on record. To Officer Valdez. And to a local reporter who covered zoning issues. The subject line was simple: evidence of coordinated harassment and undisclosed conflict of interest. I attached the vandalism footage, Debbie's threat recording, and Tessa's documents showing the development plan and Debbie's involvement. Then I waited. And for the first time since I moved in, I watched the power shift away. From Debbie, not because I got louder than her, but because I got clearer than her. Within 48 hours, the HOA called an emergency meeting. The room was packed. Debbie sat alone for the first time. No crowd around her, no applause, no supportive smiles. Mark looked like he hadn't slept. Tessa looked nervous but determined. I stood up, plugged in my laptop, and didn't raise my voice once. I showed the fence compliance. I showed the trespassing. I showed the threat. I showed the vandalism. Then I showed the email where Debbie wrote about saving 6 figures by controlling access through my land. Debbie jumped up, face flushed. "This is a witch hunt," she yelled. "He moved in and tried to destroy our community." I looked at her and said, plain and slow, "I built a fence on my property. You threatened me. Your son vandalized my fence. And you hid a financial interest behind a community tradition. Those aren't opinions, Debbie. Those are facts." The vote to remove her from the board wasn't close. It was a landslide. People who'd been quiet for years suddenly found their voices. Story after story came out. Petty fines, intimidation, selective enforcement. The way Debbie used rules like weapons and smiles like cover. She walked out promising lawsuits. She never looked back. Here's the twist. The development plan didn't die that night. A month later, I got a letter from a law firm representing a land investment group asking about voluntary access discussions. Different name. Same hunger. Debbie wasn't the whole problem. She was the loudest face of it. The thing behind her was still alive, still looking for a way around my fence instead of respecting it. So I'll end with this, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. Was I wrong for putting up that fence, even if the neighborhood had been using that trail for years? Is tradition a real excuse to trespass? Or is it just a polite word for entitlement? And if you've ever seen an HOA, a boss, a neighbor, or anyone with a little power use it to bully somebody quieter, did people step in, or did everyone wait until it got ugly first? Drop your take below, because I promise you, the next time someone tells you it's not about the fence, it's probably exactly about the fence.